Hi everybody, welcome to PCS 101. My name is Lillian Ruiz and I am the instructor in the class. So what I thought I would do is use this video to introduce you to the class and what we will be doing over the course of the semester. And then next class we can begin actually with the content of the course itself. So if you're watching this video, I assume you have found your way onto Moodle. Congratulations. And you can see that on our Moodle site, we've got several options. There is a folder at the top that's entitled Syllabus and Other Documents. And this is where I've uploaded our syllabus and our course outline, and I will be uploading any handouts that I would have been distributing if we were meeting live. And then you can see that there is a place for assignment due dates, which are also listed on our course outline, but I thought I would just list these due dates out separately. There also is a folder for past class sessions. So what I'm going to be doing is keeping up the current week on our Moodle site, and once that week has elapsed, I'm going to move it into the folder past class sessions so that you can reference the previous weeks at your convenience, but you've just got the current week on the Moodle site for you to easily find. You can also see that I've got a section for a discussion forum, which I'm going to be talking about a little bit more in the next few minutes when I review the syllabus. Basically, it's a place where you can interact with me and with your peers, trying to simulate what we would discuss in class, for instance. There also is an optional live chat, so you're not required to participate, but if you ever wanted to interact with me or your peers through chat, you can access that through that icon. And then finally, there also is an optional live Zoom. So if you ever wanted to interact with me via Zoom, this is my Zoom contact information, so we could just set up an appointment and interact via Zoom if you so wanted to. So I encourage you to open up all of these links and become familiar with them. What I'm going to be doing is reviewing the information in the syllabus and other documents folder, specifically the syllabus and the course outline, which is what I would be reviewing with you if we were meeting in person. So if you access that, you'll see that you've got some information at the top, just some logistical information. For instance, my name, Lillian Ruiz. Usually that's one of the first questions I get is, what should I call you? I'm pretty informal. Most people call me Lillian, but whatever is comfortable to you is fine. I like to joke that as long as you don't call me Hey Shorty or something like that, then there shouldn't be any difficulties. My email is here, just my surname without my first initial, ruiz@gcc.mass.edu. So if you ever see an email address that's just a surname, that lets you know that this person has been at the school for a very long time, probably pre-internet days, believe it or not. And I started in 1993, so this gives you an idea of how long I've been at GCC. My phone number is there. I doubt I would be in my office, but you can always leave a voicemail, and I'll be checking that regularly. My office is in North 328A, and my office hour is something we can do by appointment, either via Zoom, if you'd like to do that, or chat room, if you'd prefer that, or telephone, if you'd prefer that, or in person. We can make arrangements for that as well. So again, I want to try to be as flexible as possible. So this class is a public speaking class, and yes, it does come with a textbook, which is of surprise to some students. And the point of the textbook is just to review just some general suggestions on how to put together an effective speech, as well as to introduce you to some of the language and the definitions associated with public speaking and communications, which is usually what you see in a 101 class. So I've ordered the 18th edition because I believe there are used copies of that in the GCC bookstore. However, you can use a previous or a later edition. Obviously, page numbers may not necessarily match up, but the content should be pretty similar. So if you find an earlier or a later edition, let's say if you were to find something on Amazon or in the GCC bookstore, then certainly you could use that regardless of the edition. And I'm also going to be putting an edition on reserve in the GCC library. so that you can access. But you do need to have a copy of the text. And what you will soon see is that I put most of the readings from the textbook up front. So I wanted us to have that content so that we could use when we actually deliver speeches. And I understand that this class leads to a little bit of anxiety. In fact, there have even been some studies that have shown that individuals, when interviewed, said they fear public speaking more than they actually fear death, which goes to show the kind of anxiety that sometimes is associated with public speaking. So this class is designed to reduce some of that anxiety, just to give you an opportunity to practice, because if you are not a performer, or if you're not a teacher, chances are you probably don't speak in front of the public. Now, of course, the added twist to this is that this is an online public speaking class, so this is going to be a little bit different. But that said, this is an online world, especially since COVID. So I think being able to communicate with an online audience has become just as important as being able to communicate with a live audience. So again, as I indicated, this class is to help you prepare public speeches and then actually to deliver them, because basically practice leads to a great reduction in anxiety. I also have a note that it's assumed you'll have a good dictionary and thesaurus, which I know is probably loaded into your computer, but having access to something and using something can be two different things. And in fact, while I put this on all of my syllabi, I teach English classes as well as media and popular culture classes. One of the things that I say in public speaking is that perhaps the dictionary and thesaurus is less important, because when you're speaking in the public, you're not necessarily going to be as precise as when you are writing, which is an advantage and a disadvantage. But there is an acting component to public speaking, a performance component that's just as important as the content component. Though the content component is very important, it's why you'll oftentimes see English teachers like myself teaching public speaking classes. The course description, just to briefly review what I had, what you had probably reviewed with your advisor when you registered for the class, is that this class focuses on the principles of public speaking as communication, stressing the role of the speaker in the communication process. The course emphasizes the proper preparation and delivery of speeches. Each student delivers a minimum of 5 speeches and participates in small group activities. And the prerequisite for this class is what we call English Composition 1 at GCC. That could be either English 101, 103, or 105, or concurrent enrollment. In other words, that you already have some background in putting together an argument, which is what you learn in English 101, so that you can utilize those skills in public speaking. So if you feel that you don't necessarily have those requirements satisfied, please reach out to me so that we can talk about some of the options that are available to you. And then under student learning outcomes, I've listed 5 points for this course. As a result of successfully completing this course, students should be able to, 1, improve oral speaking skills. I understand that you already have oral communication skills. You never would have made it this far if you hadn't. But the idea is to improve upon them. To develop skills and self-confidence in acquiring and presenting information. Sometimes you know the content of what you are going to be speaking about, and then it's just a question of organizing that content. But sometimes you don't know the content and you need to find that information. We'll talk about both of those situations. To develop skills and self-confidence in acquiring and presenting information leads to apply critical and analytic thinking, which I've got in all of my syllabi. And by critical thinking, I don't mean necessarily criticizing somebody. I mean analyzing, interpreting, asking questions, or doing what I'm fond of saying toddlers do very well, is they ask why. And that is critical thinking. And sometimes you're not necessarily going to get a straightforward answer to that. I've always said that's the difference between high school, where you learn a lot of what, and college, where you grapple with a lot of the why questions. To promote a greater understanding of communication, formal and informal settings, and I suspect you probably do this intuitively in many instances, that you change your presentation based on the environment, what you wear, what you say, how you say it. Obviously, you will present differently at a job interview than you might at a party. So the idea is figuring out what is the best mode of presentation for that particular situation. And to promote each student's unique sense of voice. That you shouldn't sound like me, you shouldn't sound like the textbook, you should sound like yourself. That really is your greatest strength, is your personality, particularly when you're trying to connect with an audience, whether it be a live audience or whether it be an online audience. So procedures. So I'm going to try to duplicate as much as possible what would occur if we were meeting in person, or what's sometimes known as a brick and mortar class. So if we were meeting in person, we would be meeting Tuesdays, Thursdays at 9 o'clock. So what you can expect every Tuesday, Thursday at 9 o'clock is a class video of the particular class that I will be posting on our Moodle site. So I will post a video of myself discussing class material by the time our class would normally meet in person. So that would be every Tuesday, Thursday, 9 a.m. I'm going to aim to try to get that video up before then, but certainly by Tuesday, Thursday at 9 a.m. And then you have 48 hours in which to watch that particular video, and I'm going to ask a corresponding attendance question connected to that video. And that attendance question will be posted in our discussion forum. And when you respond to that discussion question, that counts as your attendance for the class. So you're not evaluated on the content of your response. You basically are just responding to illustrate that you've got an understanding of what happened in that particular class and an understanding of how that could relate to the question that I've asked. Now, there's lots of different ways you can proceed with this discussion forum. Much like there are lots of different ways you could proceed if you were taking an in-person class. You could decide to participate a great deal and respond to the comments of your classmates. Or you could decide to be rather quiet and absorb the contents of your classmates. And I think both ways are valid ways to learn. And this is how I run my discussion forums as well. So you're not necessarily required to respond to your classmates' posts. What I do ask is that you read your classmates' posts so that you basically would get exposure to what you would hear in the classroom. And if you feel compelled to respond to your classmate, certainly do so. And I will be responding to all of your posts. So you should be reading not just your classmates' posts, but all of my responses to their posts, as well as my response to you. So that's my way of trying to duplicate what would occur in a class discussion. The videos would be what would occur in terms of my offering content to the class. And you can see that I've indicated this under procedures. Any additional interaction you have with your classmates in the discussion forum is participation, similar to participating in a live class. Some students learn best by participating, others learn best by listening, so you can decide how much or how little you should participate. You should, however, read all of the discussion forum responses from your classmates for optimal learning. And then you are going to also be taking some written quizzes over the course of the semester. They are going to be open book, open notes. And what I'm going to be doing is posting them on particular dates, and I'll talk about those dates in a few minutes. And you will have 48 hours in which to respond to that particular quiz. And I'm going to be asking you to submit in materials to my email address because that works best with my grading program. So I will be posting the written quizzes, which we will discuss as the semester progresses. And then you will submit your responses to my email, which again is Ruiz, R-U-I-Z, at gcc.mass.edu, via PDF. And I do ask that it be via PDF because that's how my grading program works. And I will return the graded quizzes to your email. So what we will be doing over the course of the semester is having some class discussion and group work via the online discussion forums, some mini lectures via the videos that I will be posting about the class, and student speeches. And because this is an online class, you have the option in terms of how you would like to deliver this particular speech. So you can decide to deliver this speech live via Zoom, or you can decide to instead record your speech and post it onto our Moodle site. Now, there are pros and cons to each of these. What I'm assuming will happen, according to my roster, there are 20 students in class, is that I will have a group of students who will want to present their speeches live via Zoom, and I will also have a group of students who would rather post their speeches, their video speech recordings onto Moodle. So I ask that you contact me as soon as possible via my email to let me know if you think you might be interested in presenting your speech live via Zoom. And what I will do is gather all of those names and try to find a time that is agreeable to all of us. I know that won't be an easy trick. And of course, if I can't do that, you always have the option of recording your speech and uploading it onto Moodle site. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as the semester progresses. Regardless of what you choose to do, you'll have experience with being able to deliver to an audience. It's just a question of whether you're delivering to an online audience or you are delivering to a live audience, so to speak, though you would be doing that through technology, through Zoom. So the course requirements. Basically, you're expected to complete all of the reading and writing assignments by the due date. And over the course of the semester, we're going to have 3 graded speeches. Again, I had indicated that we will do a lot of the textbook reading up front. And then our first speech will be a 5-minute speech, and it will be an autobiographical speech where I will ask you to tell the class a little bit about yourself. And there will be lots of different ways that you could proceed with this. You can give kind of an overview of your life, but you need to do it within the context of about 5 minutes. You could perhaps focus on a particular time period in your life or a particular hobby or interest of yours in your life, but remember the focus is on you, not necessarily the hobby. Our second speech, after you've delivered your first, so then everybody will have a sense of who their classmates are and will have had a chance to practice some of their public speaking skills. Our second speech will be an informative speech. That will be 10 minutes long, where you get to teach the class something. And again, you've got lots of options on how to go about doing that, whether it be something that you already have some knowledge or some familiarity with, whether it be something that you're learning or learned in class, or something new that you want to learn about, and this is your opportunity to learn about it and share it. Or perhaps you can expand on something that you mentioned in your autobiographical speech. And for this particular speech, not only is it longer at 10 minutes, but you will also be using audio or visuals, which is something that you can elect to use with your first speech, but you won't be required to. So by the time we get to the second speech, we'll talk about using audio visuals and how to incorporate that into your presentation. Finally, our third speech, and that is a persuasive speech. That will be 15 minutes in length, and you are going to take a topic upon which reasonable people could disagree, something that could be debated, and you're going to be taking a position and trying to convince your audience of your particular position. Again, lots of different ways you can do this. You can choose one of those hot button controversial topics of our society, or you can choose something that's much less controversial, but the idea is that ultimately people can disagree with. And for this particular speech, you will be using outside resources, and we'll talk about how you incorporate those outside resources. So you can see how all of the speeches build upon themselves. So there will be practice sessions that are devoted to each of these 3 speeches, and practice sessions are just that. It's a practice session. It's a way for you to interact with me about your speech in the way that you think is best for you, whether you want to do that via email or you want to do that via telephone, you want to do that via Zoom. And the idea is that you can give me a sense of what it is you are going to be discussing. And if you wanted to, even present a practice version of that speech to me, but not necessarily required. That counts as class participation as well. So, failure to deliver a speech on the date assigned will result in failure for the assignment unless the student has unforeseeable emergency and justifiable reasons based on the evaluation of the instructor. So once you've made a commitment to your audience, so to speak, then you want to try to honor that commitment as much as possible. I had indicated there would be periodic quizzes throughout the course of the semester, 4 quizzes actually, and they will all be based on class video information and textbook information. Again, open book, open notes. There will be 20 questions in length, mostly short answer, but some multiple choice and true false as well. And I will drop the lowest quiz grade. So if you happen to miss a quiz or perform poorly on a quiz, that's the quiz grade that I drop. If Should you do well on your first 3 quizzes, you can elect to drop the last quiz, which is at the very ending of the semester, and the semester a little bit early. So that's an option that you've got. There also is an institutional services disability statement that I'm sure you're familiar with if you've studied at GCC, but I just wanted to read it out loud, that Greenfield Community College values inclusion and equal access to its programs and activities. It's committed to fostering an environment of respect and full participation. Our goal is to create learning environments that are equitable, inclusive, and welcoming. There are aspects of the instruction or the design of this course that result in barriers to your inclusion or accurate assessment or achievement. Please notify the instructor as soon as possible. And if you are a student with a disability and you need reasonable academic accommodations, please contact the Office of Disability Services to discuss your needs and your options. You can see that the contact information is there on the syllabus. So as I continue on towards the ending of the syllabus, you'll notice that I have a section called Speeches. That in this course we will examine the following principles of speech delivery. So we're going to begin with discovering and limiting the topic. In other words, what am I going to talk about and how do I fit it into the time frame that I've been given? Number 2, adapting to the audience. Who is your audience and how do you adapt to their expectations and needs? And in some ways, we all have an advantage because we know who the audience is. It's our classmates and myself. Gathering information. So if you do need to find information from outside sources, where do you go about doing that and how do you incorporate that into the speech? Organizing and outlining. Probably the most important part of a speech is all of the prep work that comes ahead of time. 5, developing an acceptable style, suiting purpose and occasion. Again, making sure that you are adapting to your environment. Practicing and presenting the speech. As I indicated that you will be having practice sessions with me, and also you will be delivering your speech, whether you decide to deliver it live via Zoom or you decide to deliver it by recording it and then posting it onto our Moodle site. Coping with communication apprehension, nerves, which is very common with public speaking. And active listening, responding to the speeches of others. So you will be listening to the speeches of your classmates, as well as listening to some sample speeches that I would have found online, in no way affiliated with GCC, for you to give your feedback on as well. So by the ending of the class, you should have had some good exposure to different kinds of speeches, as well as some practice with putting together your own speech. As I indicated, there are 3 graded speeches, the first being autobiographical for 5 minutes, second being informative, 10 minutes, the third being persuasive, 15 minutes. And all of these guidelines will be discussed further in class. And you will select the specific topic with my assistance. And the instructor needs to approve the topic beforehand. Outlines are required of all 3 speeches. And again, we'll talk about different ways that you could go about putting together an effective outline. And sent to my email, ruiz@gcc.mass.edu, so that I can quickly review those outlines and give you some feedback. I will evaluate them very informally on a checkmark system, with an excellent being a plus and a good being check plus, a satisfactory being check. And that's where most of the grades range. There also is a less than satisfactory and unsatisfactory. Video recording. So I always encourage you, whether you are presenting live on Zoom or you are uploading onto the class or you're presenting live, to record yourself so that you can view your performance at a later date. Recording is not the hard part. It's the watching the performance that's the difficult part. And I'm able to give you a little bit of extra credit if you do that. So if you wanted to earn 5 extra credit points on your quiz, you could do a review of not just your classmates' speeches, but of your own recorded speech as well. And it would just be about a paragraph or so in response to talking about what you think your strengths and weaknesses were in the performance of your speech. And you can do this with all 3 of the speeches, so that means you can earn up to 15 extra credit points before I drop the lowest quiz grade, so that mathematically this works to your advantage. And I hope you would like to do that at least once, not just because of the extra credit, but more importantly so that you can see the most important speech of the class, your speech, the speech that you may not get to see. Attendance is important. So even though we're meeting online, the expectation is that you're watching these videos in a timely manner and responding to the attendance questions. So class activity and discussion is extremely important, can't be made up. So absences and tardiness will be negatively reflected in your participation grade. And answering those discussion questions will basically comprise your participation grade. And excessive absences could even result in failure. Consultations, you can always meet with me by appointment. Conduct and demeanor, I've never had this been an issue in any of my classes, but I think I need to say it out loud, that each speech is the equivalent of an examination. So both the presenter and the audience should treat it with the appropriate respect. And inappropriate disruptions will be negatively reflected in your final grade. And I'm going to skip the plagiarism section, I'll talk about that next class, and just go to the grading section, where 10% is participation, which basically is watching the class video, responding to the discussion questions, being engaged in the course. 10% are those outlines that I'm going to ask you to construct for each of your 3 speeches. Again, I'm grading them informally on a checkmark system. 20% for speech number 1, that 5-minute autobiographical speech. 20% for speech number 2, your 10-minute informative speech. 20% for speech number 3, your 15-minute persuasive speech. And then 20% for your quizzes, 4 quizzes over the course of the semester. I dropped the lowest grade. And that is 100% for an A being excellent, a B being good, C being satisfactory, and there are other letters after C, but don't talk about them, especially on the first day of class. So that's my review of the syllabus, and I wanted to jump ahead to my review of the course outline, which basically is a calendar of what it is that we're going to be doing over the course of the semester. But note that I've got a couple of disclaimers at the top, that dates and assignments might be subject to change, and reading should be completed before the dates indicated. So this is what I'm planning on discussing during a particular class. So today, the 14th of July, is purely introduction, where I review the syllabus and the course outline. And then next week is when we actually begin with the course proper. So on the 19th, what I'm going to be discussing is Chapter 1, Speech and Higher Education. I didn't put page numbers because I suspect that many of you will be using different editions. Chapter 2, Getting Started, and Chapter 3, Critical Listening. Again, this is a summer class, so it's condensed. One class is the equivalent of a week's worth of work. And then we go to Thursday the 21st, where I will be discussing 3 other chapters. Chapter 7, Organizing and Outlining Your Speech. Chapter 8, Beginning and Ending Your Speech. Chapter 9, Wording Your Speech. And then on the 26th, I will discuss 3 more chapters. As I indicated, I put most of the readings up front for this semester. Chapter 10, Delivering Your Speech. Chapter 4, Public Speaking and Cultural Challenges. And finally, Chapter 5, Understanding Your Audience. When we get to the 28th is when you will have your first quiz. Won't necessarily be addressing everything that I've discussed up until that point. The focus will be on the first 3 chapters. The chapters about speech and higher ed, getting started, and critical listening, as well as Chapter 7 and 8, Organizing and Outlining and Beginning and Ending Your Speech. And the quiz is more than just a way to test if you've been doing the reading and watching the videos. I'm also hopeful that this will be useful information that you can incorporate into actually constructing a speech, which is what we will be doing fairly soon by that particular date, because you'll see that by the 2nd of August, we will have our first speech autobiographical. So either you will be posting your speech onto our Moodle site on the 2nd, and I will be constructing a folder for you to do that. Or you would have reached out to me and indicated that you wanted to present your speech live via Zoom, and based on all of the other individuals who indicated the same, we would try to find a time of the day on the 2nd where most, if not all of us, could be available to go ahead and do that. So again, do contact me sooner rather than later if you think you're going to be presenting via Zoom, so that I can begin to work on the logistics of that. So the first speech, I think of it as sort of practice in the way that we can incorporate the suggestions from our textbook on how to present a speech. Then we move forward to the 4th of August, where we talk about 3 more chapters. finding and using supporting material, using visual media, and informative speeches. So that's chapter 6, chapter 11, and chapter 12. All of that should help prepare us for our next speech, which is the informative speech. You can see on the 9th, we have a second quiz on additional chapters on chapter 9, which happens to be about, let me see, I've just lost my place, wording your speech. Chapter 10, which happens to be about delivering speeches. Chapter 4, which happens to be about culture. And finally, chapter 5, which happens to be about audience. This is also when we will have practice sessions where you will either be reaching out to me, whether it be via Zoom, telephone, email, so that you can present your speech on the 11th. That would be the second speech, the informative speech. Again, same sort of idea. You would have reached out to me if you thought you wanted to present your speech live on Zoom on the 11th, and then we would try to work out a time on the 11th where most of us would be available. Or you can upload a pre-recording or a recording of your speech onto our Moodle site in the folder that would be devoted to uploading your speeches that I will be adding soon. On the 16th is when we put closure to the semester. Chapter 13, speeches to persuade, and chapter 14, argumentation and critical thinking. So we would have finished the textbook by that point. We'll have our third quiz. And again, the quizzes, open book, open notes. Those will be on chapters 11, using visual material. Chapter 12, speeches to inform, and also on chapter 6. And chapter 6, I'm looking for that here, is finding and using supporting material. I'm sorry. And in terms of chapter 11 and in terms of chapter 12, that's using visual media or speeches to inform. So that would help you in terms of putting on your final speech. And that would ultimately be your persuasive speech. You can see that on the 18th, we have our third quiz and our practice speeches again. And then we are delivering the speech on the 23rd, speech number 3, whether you decide to upload it or present it via Zoom. And then the class could end on the 25th, which is when we will have our fourth and final quiz, which will be on our last two chapters, chapter 13 and chapter 14, which happen to be on persuasive speeches and argumentation and critical thinking. But notice there's one more class on Tuesday the 30th to catch up. If for whatever reason our class starts to fall behind, then ultimately we have an additional class so that we can finish up the semester. If we don't meet that class, then we can finish the semester a little bit early before you begin the fall. So that gives you an overview. And if you're looking at the materials that I posted, you'll see that I also have a speech rating sheet there that I'm not going to be talking about now, but I'll be using that as a template to evaluate at least your first speech. And then your second and your third speech, I just evaluate them by noting strengths and weaknesses. But I wanted you to see the elements in that template that are going to be of importance in terms of content and also in terms of delivery. But again, I'll talk about that more in depth as the semester progresses. And that pretty much is an overview of the class itself. So for today's attendance question, I thought I would do what I would do if we were meeting in class, is that ultimately I would ask you to introduce yourself to your classmates. So that's going to be today's attendance question. And you can see that I've got the notes for the class immediately below the video, and I'll always be doing that. So today it was just the review of the syllabus and the outline, and finally our attendance question that you would answer on the class discussion form. Basically to introduce yourself to the class, and you're free to upload pictures and video, but you're not required. So that would do it for this class. Certainly if you've got any questions about anything that I've reviewed, reach out to me. And then next week we will begin by talking about the elements of public speaking. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. And if for whatever reason you are interested in taking a second summer session course, I am also teaching a class in media and popular culture this second summer session, and it's constructed much like this class is. And basically it's CMN 153, where we talk about major elements of media, whether it be advertising and the internet or books or magazines. It's another interest of mine. You might have heard that I am the person who teaches the media class in horror film, which I will be teaching in the fall. I'm not teaching that in the summer, though I am offering a condensed version of that course as community education at the Lava Center, downtown Greenfield. No grades, no expectations. Basically, it's just watching movies and discussions, almost like a book discussion group. And that's happening over the course of this summer. So if you're interested in any of those pieces, just let me know and I can give you additional information. Again, I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well, and we will continue on next class. Take care. Bye-bye.